Welcome to Empowered. I'm Elizabeth Naumovski. I often find myself wondering as artificial intelligence or AI becomes better and seamless at creating content and even mimicking conversation, do authentic human stories become even more essential? For centuries, storytelling has been important in passing down our family history and carried our knowledge, identity, and truth from one generation to the next. Yet, we often overlook how vital our personal stories still resonate today. What do we risk losing if we stop valuing them? And what continually surprises me is how many women believe their experiences are ordinary, only to reveal strength, insight, and beauty that deserve to be shared. These are the stories that remind us who we truly are. Today, I'm joined by Michelle Hohn, president of Akashic Communications Corp. And founder and creator of Gems Unearthed. Michelle, welcome to Empowered.
Thank you for having me, Liz. It's a pleasure to be with you.
So I can't wait to have this conversation because to me, it's super authentic about women and their experiences. Now, we are more connected than any point in human history right now, yet many people report feeling increasingly disconnected from one another. Why do you think that is?
I think it's one of the greatest paradoxes of our time right now that we've never been more connected through technology, but having more ways to connect isn't necessarily the same as feeling connected. So technology is extraordinary at helping us locate, and exchange information, but human legacy has never really been about information alone. It's more about passing on experience, wisdom, and understanding. So we don't just need information. We crave belonging, perspective, meaning making, and the ability to see ourselves reflected in the experience of others is really important. So I think as we become more digitally connected, it's incredibly important to not lose conversations, curiosity, and shared experiences that help us understand one another.
So, as artificial intelligence becomes increasingly capable of generating content, images, and even bigger stories and human like conversations, do you think
Mhm.
authentic human stories become more important?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we're already in a time where pretty much daily we're asking, like, was that real? So we live in a world where content can be generated endlessly, but what can't be manufactured is a life actually lived. So a person's memories, their relationships, the choices they make, challenges, lessons they earn through living. That's what makes us uniquely human. So as content becomes infinite, I think authenticity becomes really precious.
So, throughout history, stories have been one of the primary ways knowledge passes from generation to generation. You have chats with your parents or your grandparents. Do you think we've underestimated the importance of preserving personal stories in modern society? And what is at risk if we stop valuing these incredible human stories and experiences?
Yeah, I actually think most people instinctively understand the power of storytelling. The books we remember, the speeches that move us, that family lore that we keep passing down from one generation to the next. Stories stay with us because human beings are wired to learn through experience. So I'm not sure that we've underestimated stories, but I do wonder if we may be underestimating how easily it could all be lost. We assume there will always be more time, another conversation, another opportunity to ask, but so much wisdom disappears simply because nobody captured it. So if we stop valuing human stories, the risk is losing like this irreplaceable part of our collective experience. Someone has to ask, someone has to listen, and someone has to help people document this human wisdom.
I find that in order for me to remember certain things, I'm extremely tactile and I like to
Mhm.
touch and I like to feel. And, if I'm having a conversation with a loved one, my family, a girlfriend, or whatever, we are constantly hugging or touching, even shaking hands or whatever. To me, that helps resonate the history, the experience, and everything else that goes with it.
Exactly. Yep.
Welcome back to Empowered. I'm Elizabeth Naumovski. Today's topic is protecting human legacy beyond artificial intelligence. So, Michelle, It seems most people remember stories better than facts. And that's what I tell all of my guests who are unempowered. You know, share a story because it resonates better with people. From your experience, why do you think stories stay with us longer?
Yeah, I completely agree with you. Facts are incredibly important because they inform us and tell us what happened. But stories provide context and they help us understand not only what happened, but more of some reality behind it, like why, like it explains the why. And stories also invite us to recognize ourselves in someone else's experiences. While appreciating the lives that can be very different from our own. Sometimes we see totally different things, but sometimes we see our own doubts and hopes or turning points reflected back to us. And then there's something deeply validating in realizing that we're not alone in something that we felt or faced. And then other times we gain an entirely new perspective that broadens our understanding. Those are those aha moments.
Yeah. So, when you tell the story of your own personal life, what is the
Mhm.
thread that connects mining, sustainability, expressive writing, publishing, and women's voices?
Well, I don't think I could have deliberately set out to plan a career to connect all those dots, right? Even if I tried, but part of the process for myself, doing this work for myself is looking back. It turns out there's a very clear thread. I've just always been fascinated by people, what they do, and perhaps more importantly, why they do it. So whether it was in finance, mining, sustainability, counseling, or some of the writing work, I found myself drawn to the same question, like what more can we learn when we take the time to genuinely listen to someone? So I suppose my career has really been an exploration of that human dimension. The industries and roles may have changed along the way, but my curiosity about people and the stories that help us better understand one another never have.
It's interesting because when we have interns in the office, I always talk to them about how important communication is and how important it is
Mhm.
to be curious. Because once you graduate from university, that's not the end of writing exams. That's not the end of learning. This is just the
Right.
beginning of your life. You need to ask more questions. You need to be curious in order to get yourself
Mhm.
to that next level, to be a good leader or whatever it is. So I'm really happy that you had mentioned that because a lot of people just assume that, I'm retired, that's it. I just
Mhm.
graduated, there isn't any more. But with you, after nearly 30 years of working in the resource and finance sectors, what made you conclude that something important was missing from the way that we document our success?
Yeah, it was through my engagement work that I had a front row seat to how we tend to document success through a fairly narrow lens. So in the corporate world, capture titles and promotions, and in mining, discoveries and projects and measurable progress. And those things absolutely deserve to be transparent and celebrated. But they rarely tell us about the people who made those contributions. And then I also learned that people in workplaces and communities often have an entirely different hierarchy of concerns. And in my experience, women specifically spoke just as readily about things like family, relationships, difficult choices, and the people they're responsible to and for outside of the workplace than they did about workplace dynamics or career milestones when they've asked. So, um, I've always had in the back of my mind the importance of creating spaces where some of that lost detail could be captured, and the person fully in the driver's seat along, that the driver's seat belonged fully to the storyteller, right, and not the interviewer.
Yeah. So I want to delve a little bit deeper into Gems Unearthed. Tell us about the formation of Gems Unearthed and how it came into being and what exactly it is.
Well, Gems was one of those over 10 years in the making overnight sort of stories. So always drawn to writing, started facilitating expressive writing groups in around 2010, first around loss and grief, and later around integrating narrative therapy into regular self-care. And it was in 2014 that I participated in a project called My Mother's Story, which is exactly what it sounds like, women honoring and celebrating their mothers. And it was in 2021 that I adapted that concept and used my own techniques and approach to facilitate a group of authors who had lost their mums in childhood. It was called My Mother's Story Gone Too Soon. So it was literally through that process that I personally experienced. the transformative and healing nature of that type of writing. But then I also saw a fuller landscape of women in story subjects and how fascinating that they were. And so that combined with my engagement work, I remember thinking just how valuable it would be to capture that depth and breadth of storytelling for women in mining. So fast forward a few years, the idea started simply calling louder, how to preserve these stories all in one place. And then the call became too loud to ignore. And earlier this year, Gems Unearthed was officially launched.
Okay, so I can't wait to participate in Gems on Earth. Please don't go away. We'll be right back with more storytelling and the importance of it. Welcome back to Empowered. I'm Elizabeth Naumovski. Today's topic is protecting human legacy beyond artificial intelligence. Okay, so Michelle, if I'm understanding things correctly, one of the ways for contributing authors to write their story includes an AI supported methodology. Help the audience understand how we are protecting human legacy beyond AI and leveraging AI using a custom story builder to support story drafting at the same time, because it feels a little convoluted.
Yeah, that might seem a little confusing. It's actually one of the most exciting aspects of GEMS because it actually shows us that technology and humanity don't have to compete. They can complement one another. So what I did was I developed a custom GPT. I called it the GEMS Narrative Story Builder because I recognized like one of the biggest barriers people have, anyone has often faces is simply getting started. So not everyone considers themselves a writer, but even those skilled in the craft, they can sometimes struggle to see the larger story, themes, connections, or organize years of memories into a meaningful narrative while leading busy lives. So what the technology does is it helps us work more efficiently. It identifies recurring patterns, connections, and themes across some expressive writing prompts that I have them do, and a structured conversation and interview that might otherwise sort of be difficult to see for yourselves. But that's where its role ends. So from the very beginning, we're incredibly intentional about protecting the things that make these stories human. The GPT isn't there to invent experiences. There's very specific instructions, like thou shalt not invent experiences, exaggerate achievement, or create polished versions of someone's life. Like this isn't content management or brand management, right? Like this is, we're here to help reveal and organize what's authentically there. So the voice, the lived experience, the reflection, the editing, and ultimately the story itself always belongs to the author. So I view the enhancing capacity of AI as how it helps, not even trying to replace human wisdom, but really helping preserve it.
Well, it is supposed to be used as a tool, regardless of where you use AI. It is a tool. It is not something that will reinvent you or your job
Yes.
or anything else. But I do want to mention, I'm very excited about writing my story and adding it to Gem. I have
Excellent.
actually
I can't
added
wait.
it. I've added a piece in my calendar so that I actually have to sit down in front of my computer and do it and finish it this weekend. So I am very much looking forward to this.
Fantastic.
And
I love it.
yeah, so, it's interesting because you and I have talked a few times on Zoom, trying to get to know each other, trying to get to know the stories and everything else. And many women basically tell themselves, that darkness that they have in their mind. I haven't accomplished enough. I don't have a story that's worth telling. What would you say to these women that have that negativity in their head or the imposter syndrome and think, well, I'm not even at that level? What would you say to these women?
Yeah, sadly, I hear this all the time. Like a woman will say, "Well, I don't have a story to tell, but do you know so and so?" They want to refer someone, which is interestingly how the GEMS nomination feature came into being was for that. It's like, well, I want your story, and I'll take that nomination too. Thanks. But we seem to be surrounded by the impression that only extraordinary achievements are worth preserving, and GEMS deliberately just rejects that notion flat out. We're interested in an incredibly diverse range of lives, professions, career stages, and perspectives, right? So, while we will have those stories too, we're not only looking for the most accomplished woman in the room. So, my response is always the same. Trust me, you do have a story worth telling.
And I love the fact that you said that because I've been trying to get my mom to come on Empowered and talk
Mhm.
about her story. And she
Yeah.
doesn't think that her story is worthy, even though She, left Macedonia at the age of 19 with my father, and they didn't even know each other. They met the next
Yeah.
day, they were engaged, next month they were married.
Hmm.
They lived on the streets or park benches or whatever in Italy, France, displaced persons camp in Germany. There's a huge story to tell. And the thing is, this is
Absolutely.
Canada.
Hmm.
Canadians have a story to tell. You don't have to be a CEO. You don't have to be a leader.
No,
You don't have to
no.
be in a capacity where you are in charge of people. I personally believe that everybody that is, well, come to Canada, whether you're first generation, you've just become a Canadian, whatever it is, you've got an incredible story that needs to be shared. And this is why we are doing this episode on Empowered, because everyone has a really good story and everyone's story needs to be shared because we can all learn from it. Please don't go away. We'll be right back with more of storytelling because of its importance. Welcome back to Empowered. I'm Elizabeth Naumovski. I'm joined by Michelle Hohn. She's the president of Akashic Communications Corp and founder and creator of Gems on Earth. Today's topic is protecting human legacy beyond artificial intelligence. Okay, Michelle, Gems began in mining, but you've already
Hmm.
seen interest from other sectors. Why do you think the concept is resonating beyond mining?
Yeah, I think it's resonating because while GEMS began with women in mining, because I'm in mining, the
Yeah.
foundational concept is totally universal. So it's that desire to connect, learn from one another, preserve wisdom, leave something meaningful behind. That's not unique to mining, right? Or to any one profession. Every single sector is full of remarkable people whose experiences, lessons, and perspectives are rarely captured in traditional, in traditional biographies and employee profiles and CVs, right? That's not the way. This is a totally different way of capturing that information. So, I already have authors from construction and tech, and perhaps finance, and media, and interest from women in accounting, finance, and law. They all recognize the same opportunity. And in some of the industries that have been traditionally more male dominated, those groups would like the female voice to come out just a little bit louder, right? So it hasn't taken long at all for GEMS to be appealing to more than just mining. It's actually a human idea. And then that's probably the bigger conversation that we're having today, anyways, right? In an age where technology can generate almost anything, it's the authentic human that becomes one of the things that can't be manufactured. And it's the most important to preserve for any sector or industry.
So when you look at Gems on Earth, what kind of
Mhm.
human legacy do you hope Gems on Earth leaves behind?
Yeah, I kind of see three sort of potential legacy threads, right? In a very practical sense, I just would like it to be a living archive of human experience, right? So, an actual archive, an actual library that current and future generations can explore and understand not only what women contributed, but who they are as people. I also hope that authors and readers do benefit from the reoccurring universal themes and the human elements in there. We've already seen themes like belonging, resilience, courage, self-doubt, reinvention, growth. And what's fascinating is even in the smallest of sample groups, it doesn't matter if our authors are students, an engineer, an executive, a retiree, the details change, but what resonates is totally universal. And that feels good. I hope Gems quietly challenges some of our assumptions. There's no single story of what a woman is in mining or any profession, what they look like. There's no cookie cutter. Everyone brings their own unique skills and talents, motivations, struggles, aspirations, and their own definition of success. That's coming through loud and clear in the stories as well. But the magic isn't inventing a story, it's creating the space to unearth it and reveal its brilliance. It's sort of part of our language. And I truly hope GEMS helps ensure more of that wisdom survives to do exactly that.
But I see Gems as an educational tool. I see so many
Oh.
women and students out there that are so afraid to make a decision because they're afraid of failing. So they're like, I don't want to do this because I'm afraid I'm going to fail. But they don't realize that every time you fail, it builds upon your foundation for success. So I
Mhm.
just listening to you, I'm looking at Gems on Earth as an educational tool where if someone feels that they're going to fail, or they're lacking the curiosity or lacking the experience or the leadership or whatever, this would be a tool that they would go to.
It's interesting you should say that. I've had in the women I have approached and asked if they would write. I've had a couple come back and say, "Well, I'm just not ready. Like I don't know what my story is." I said, "Well, what I need you to do is I need you to trust. I need you to trust you. I need you to trust me. This is about the process, and what we
Yeah.
do together is we, peel back some layers and we unveil, we unearth, to be mining word, we unearth that story together. And so you don't have to, be ready before you start. Just start."
Oh, thank you so much for your time, Michelle. This has been wonderful today.
Thank you so much, Liz. Pleasure being here.
Michelle wants you to know human wisdom is precious. Trust me, every single woman is infinitely fascinating, and every single woman's story deserves to be told. I'm Elizabeth Naumovski, and I'm here to empower you and make frugality fashionable. Thank you so much for watching. I hope that you found this enjoyable. Bye for now.